You know, in life, there's things that you just look at and you don't understand how on earth it happens the way it does, how change happens the way it does. Like some things that I don't understand when in my daily life, you're driving on the highway, no accidents whatsoever, but you're in traffic for some reason, right? And you drive for about 10 minutes, you get past a certain exit, and all of a sudden, the same road, nothing's changed, no accident, no cops, no nothing. All of a sudden, everybody's moving absolutely fine. And it's not like they're taking the exit or something like that, right? It's just somehow it just moves better. And you're sitting there and like, what the hell changed? Another thing I don't understand is when you go to a restaurant and you order your food, the waiter comes and gives you the menu and takes in the food, and then he gives you the food later, right? Why is he called the waiter? You're the one entering the diner, entering the restaurant, sitting at the table, waiting. The key word, waiting for your food. And yet, the guy who gives you the menu and the guy who gives you your food and the guy who sits you at the table is the person called the waiter. Makes no sense to me. This week, what makes no sense to me is what the hell we saw in Pittsburgh. Where did this passing attack come from? Where did this Jalen Hurts come from? What the hell is happening in Philly right now? Where did this come from? Now, I am sitting here as pleasantly shocked as anybody else in Philly land, and I am not disappointed that this is what we saw today. However, this is not the same quarterback, ladies and gentlemen. Last week, I saw this dude throw for a net 83 yards. Today, he dropped almost 300 on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Unbelievable. And now, listen. He had two touchdowns in the air today. One to AJ, one to Smitty. Both of those guys had 100 yards. The ball came out of his hand just super quick. And just right on the money. He let it rip today. And I don't know what conversation was had over this past week. Maybe the heat from what A.J. Brown was stirring up with this team, saying that, you know, what needs to improve in this offense? Passing. Well, you know what? That's what we got today. That's the offense that we've been looking to see from this Philadelphia Eagles unit. That's the quarterback that we have been waiting to see all year long. And we're going to talk about, you know, not only this offense, but the way this defense continues to play and the coaching staff, all that jazz. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But listen, what we saw in Pittsburgh, in Philly against Pittsburgh, that looked like MVP Jalen Hurts. That, ladies and gentlemen, looked like the best team in the National Football League. Bar none. That's the performance we wanted to see. That's the game that we've been waiting to see all year from Jalen Hurts and this offense and this team as a whole. Against a quality opponent too, mind you, like Pittsburgh. They're a quality football team. That's the best win, the best game that you have had all year. Bar none. Incredible. Incredible. And we're going to talk more about Jalen and what it means going forward for the Eagles in the NFC. But before we do that, you know what it is. This is the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast, and I am your host, Asif Badi. And like you, I'm an Eagles fan who wants to see this team hoist the Lombardi Trophy. And to do so, I give my opinions and give my thoughts and open the platform to any fan who wants to throw their comments in the comments section and give their opinions about the Birds in the Midnight Green. And if you want to be a part of the discussion and you want to be part of the fandom here, I have two things to ask of you. Please like and subscribe. If you do that, I'll get out to as many other Eagle fans as much as possible. And also, you'll be notified whenever we post content about the Birds in the Midnight Green. So please and thank you. Like and subscribe. On the docket is Jalen Hurts, ladies and gentlemen. The man was 25 for 32, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 43 yards on the ground and a touchdown on top of that. Now, again, that Jalen Hurts, we didn't even get that guy last week against the Carolina Panthers, right? It was like a completely different offense. And again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but when we were talking about this offense last week, we said how the passing game was awful. And it did stink, and it stunk all year. And I said the only fix to getting Jalen Hurts back on track and to get this offense back on track is to implement more RPOs into the system here. And I think the Eagles, the coaching staff, and the organization has finally acquiesced. If this is any indication, if this is any sign of things to come, the RPO for Jalen Hurts, again, he runs it as well as anybody running any other offense in the National Football League. This is his offense. When you implement the RPO, it's his offense. He's the primary decision maker. He's the one who's enabled to wheel and deal. Right? You're not giving him, you're giving him really simplistic pass concepts, and I get that. But you know what? Sometimes simplicity is okay when you have the most talented offense in the NFL with Saquon, AJ, Devontae, the offensive line. And all you have to do is sit there and get them the ball in a 5 to 10 yard window so that they can go out and make the plays that they're designed to make. I shouldn't say design, that their God-given abilities are to go ahead and make. That's all Jalen has to do. It doesn't have to translate to damn near 300 yards through the air. But what it has to translate to is being efficient, being proficient, and being effective when you decide to drop back and throw it. Again, he looked like a different guy today. 2 to 3 step dropbacks, hitting slants, hitting hitches, getting the ball out of his hands super quick. If his first or second read was not there, he took it off and ran with it. And I know people are going to say that, does that translate to games for later on? Is that something that teams can pick up on? Maybe it is. But right now you have to look at it and say, hey, we have the most talented offense in the NFL. We got the guys to beat you one-on-one. The only way you could beat us is if you double these guys and you confuse my quarterback. But we saw when he runs the RPO, when he's had that as the basis of his offense, his ceiling is as good as anybody's in the NFL because we saw it in 2022. Tonight was the night we saw that offense come back into the playbook and be a main staple in the game plan today. And he looked incredible running the offense. You get a modicum of that week to week. This team is really going to be hard to beat because you not only couple Jalen Hurts' ability to not only, again, look like an MVP today, but get the ball out of his hands quick, get everybody involved. You incorporate that with the running game that we have with Saquon Barkley, albeit he got hurt today. But you implement that with Gainwell, Barkley, Hurts himself, leaning on the offensive line. And then you have that with the defense, which, by the way, once again, showed that it's for real. You are not going to do anything against Philadelphia if this is the offense coupled with the defense that you're going to get from here till February. Nobody's beating them. Not when they play like this. And as good as Detroit has been all year, and again, they played a tough team against Buffalo here, and I picked the money line for Buffalo. They dropped 48 or something like that on Buffalo or whatever, or 38 or whatever it was. You're not going to get a 48 burger on this Philadelphia Eagles defense. It's just not happening. You're not breaking the 40 point mark. Now I know Tampa Bay dropped 33 or 36 on us before the bye, but this is a different unit. It just is. Like all year, we have seen this unit after the bye just come in and play some of the best football in the NFL, playing itself as the best defense in the National Football League this year. And it's clearly number one unit in the NFL. Better than the Chiefs right now. Better than the Chargers right now. Better than Denver right now. Better than any defense. The Minnesota Vikings. They're better than any of those defenses right now. Philadelphia continues to show week after week after week that they're the best unit in football on the defensive side. And now you're coupling this with hopefully what continues to be a trend in Jalen Hurts' RPO style play, the quick decision, the decisive throws. If that's the passing game you're going to get, nobody's beating this team. Nobody. Because again, this is the offense he ran when he looked like an MVP candidate. And I know, like I said, it's simplistic pass concepts that he's running. He's only looking at half the field. All that jazz. You want to be nitpicky? He missed a lot of guys in the flat on the opposite side of the field when the whole defense is moving to one side. I get it. And again, I'm not saying the guy's perfect. But what I'm saying right now is that if you want to get the best out of Jalen Hurts, the offense you ran today is exactly the one you got to run. And we talked about it last week in last week's episode after the Carolina game. You want to get this passing game back on track, the RPO has to be the staple of your offense. Because it still implements the running game with Saquon. It implements Jalen Hurts and his ability to use his legs when he has to. And it also forces him to make quicker decisions with the ball, where he's not scanning the field and holding it and playing patty cake with the football for 3 to 5 seconds and then taking sacks. It's quick, decisive decisions. Gets the ball out of his hands quick. And every quarterback in today's NFL gets the ball out of their hands quick. Find their first, second read and hit them in stride. That's what you need to do. Let the playmakers on the outside go ahead and get the job done for you. That's all Philadelphia Eagle fans are asking Jalen Hurts to do. I am not looking... Okay, would it be great if he threw for 300 yards every single game? Absolutely. Nobody would complain about that. But I'm not looking for this every single week. I don't need him to do this every single week. What I need him to do is to have stylistically the same play he's had today. Quick decisions, ball out of your hands, right on time, right in stride. Let A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith show why they're the best duo receivers in the National Football League. Let them go ahead and make the yak yardage. Let them go ahead and make the plays that are needed to take a 5-yard slant and turn it into a 25-yard gain. That's the staple of San Francisco's offense for the past 6 years. That's the staple of a lot of offenses in the NFL. You let the receivers go ahead and make the plays that they need to make. And then in the red zone, you got the running game, you got the tush push, the brotherly shove, and you also now have the ability to work the middle of the field with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and now Calcaterra. This is becoming now a scary unit if this is the game plan that you're going to implement going forward. Because I think next week we got Washington at Washington. Now, it's an important game for us because not only is it a division game, but it's another NFC opponent. And in the quest for the 1 seed, because Detroit took an L against Buffalo, you need to have a better conference record than the team above you if you haven't played head-to-head. And the Detroit Lions have only lost 1 game in the NFC, and that's against Tampa Bay, which, by the way, we'll talk about this in another episode, but I don't want any part of Tampa Bay right now. Tampa Bay's good. That's a good football team. They're hot. They got a good defense, and their quarterback, Baker Mayfield, always been a big fan. That boy can sling it. Really, really can. But that's another conversation for another day. I'm talking about this team's schedule going forward. We got the rest of the NFC East now. You got Washington at Washington, which is a big game at 1 o'clock. Then you play the Dallas Cowboys at home, and then you play the New York Giants at home. So this next 3 games, if you win out, all of a sudden the pressure's on Detroit because now they got to win out. And they have some division games going forward. They already swept Green Bay, which is fine, but they got Minnesota, they got Chicago coming up, and I'm gonna look up who else they play here on the rest of the schedule here, because they got the Vikings, the Niners, and the Bears. Not the easiest games to finish your season on. Is it possible they go 2-1 in that stretch? Now they're all NFC teams now. So, yeah, it's definitely possible that they lose out, or that they go 2-1 here. And if one of those games is against a team like Minnesota, for example, all of a sudden the 1 seed becomes, up in the air, becomes up for grabs all of a sudden, right? So, again, we're going to talk about seeding in another episode at another time, because today's episode is more about how this offense looked with Jalen Hurts. It looked phenomenal, like I said. But all the implications of what this offense, if it continues to look like this going forward, it changes the landscape of the NFC if you can get this kind of play out of Jalen Hurts. Because one thing's for sure, guys, RPO Jalen Hurts versus what we've had the first 8-9 weeks of the year. 2 totally different quarterbacks. If you're going to get RPO Jalen Hurts, coupled with the talent on this team, you got a Super Bowl contender, a Super Bowl winning team potentially. If you're getting Jalen Hurts from the first 8 weeks, 8-9 weeks of the year, you got a team that could potentially, maybe make the division round and lose. Maybe be a team that loses their first playoff game. That's the difference in what that and that's the importance of what this game means. If this is a trend or is this a blip? If it's a trend, the NFL has a huge problem on their hands. Okay? Because if that's the kind of confidence and that's the kind of quarterback and that's the kind of offense we're going to get going into the NFC playoff picture, nobody outside of Tampa Bay is going to be able to match what Philadelphia can do on the field. Because Tampa Bay, they're good and they kind of have our number. Outside of that, I'm not afraid of Detroit. I'm not afraid of Green Bay. I'm not afraid of Atlanta, Seattle. I'm not afraid of Minnesota. Washington even. Like, there's nobody in the NFC outside of Tampa Bay that I look at and I say, well, shit. If we get them, we're going to be in trouble. Because this defense is for real. The running game's for real. The coordinators are for real. Sirianni, give him credit. He's done a good job this year. The only question that we had on this football team is whether or not Jalen Hurts can lead this team to victory through the air. If Pittsburgh was any sign of things to come going forward, this team is going to win it all. But again, we have to wait and see now, because this is only 1 week. Again, we have to see whether this is fool's gold or whether or not this is the real thing. Fingers crossed. Feet crossed. Whatever it is you got to do. Eyes crossed. Everything you got to cross. Hopefully it's the real thing. Because like I said, you get this offense. Nobody in the NFL is going to be able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's just the truth. Hey. Thank you so much for watching the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. If you want to continue to support the channel, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. Also, check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Riding the Bench Eagles Pod. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're on there. Thank you so much for listening, and please join us next time here at the Riding the Bench Eagles Podcast.